Very warm welcome to all of you. We really value our AGMs and we really value the opportunity to see everybody. So it's the one time of the year really when members can come and chat to us. We can look at the annual report and reflect on the year that we've just had. And there's obviously the votes and an opportunity to ask some questions, so we'll come on to that later. So I think those are all my kind of main announcements over. So great pleasure just to hand over now to Megan McCubbin, who is our president, who will be overseeing the AGM proceedings. And just to say a great big thank you to Megan. We're so delighted to have you on board. Thank you for everything you do, not just for the Trust, but for nature in general and all the brilliant campaigning and awareness work that you do. It's just hugely welcome and appreciated.
So welcome everybody to the 64th Annual General Meeting for the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Wildlife Trust. I am very fortunate that I get to work with quite a lot of NGOs all across the sector from different projects. I mean, yesterday I was looking at Japanese maple trees, Wakehurst Kew Gardens. The day before that I was filming nocturnal bats. The day before that I was doing emails. Not quite as exciting. It's not always that glamorous, I promise. But I'm incredibly fortunate to work with a lot of species, a lot of organisations and a lot of passionate people. And I mean, I might say this because I'm biased as the president of this trust in particular, but every time I join forces with the team and work with them, I am always astounded by their boldness and bravery in a sector which I would say is probably largely worried and concerned to really speak out for nature. So to be part of this trust is genuinely a real big honour. Debbie is a fantastic CEO, as I'm sure you all know. She's a fantastic advocate. I'm going to make her uncomfortable now. Payback. She's a fantastic CEO and is leading with a lot of great courage. And I think we should all be incredibly lucky that this is our local wildlife trust. I think, I'm very proud to be part of it all. And I thought what I would say today is a bit of a story, really, about science communication. Because when people ask me what I do, it's really hard to describe my role. Not only, volunteering with all of these incredible charities, but, everything I do. I mean, I always describe myself as a science communicator. And my job is to try and get as many people as invested in nature as I possibly can. I want people to love it as much as I do, get excited by it, feel empowered by it, and ultimately connected to it. But we do live in a time where nature connectedness, that ability for anybody to really stand outside, smell, hear, engage all of those senses in our natural world is limited. We're very privileged that we all have that nature connectedness. That's why we're in the room today. And that is a privilege. We're really lucky to have the space and time to be able to do that. And the story that I was going to share for you is sometimes we talk about the big, sexy, rare things, and I'm all for that. But I get excited by the tiny things, the turn of the season, and I'm a big fan of autumn. And of course, the blackberries this year came out a little bit early. I don't know if anyone else noticed that. They kind of, all of a sudden, they weren't there, and then boom, it was blackberry season, and it was a bit earlier than it should have been, but that's okay. And I remember as a child always going out and picking blackberries with my grandmother, and I would get boxes and boxes of them, and she would make her iconic pies that I would just adore to this day. But that's a form of nature connectedness. And to this day, I go and walk my dogs, and we stop by the blackberry bush because they love blackberries, and they're very careful using their teeth to pluck the lower blackberries off the bush. I mean, I wouldn't eat the ones on the lower level, mainly because I know what dogs do. But that's their level, and that's that's fine. I just don't let them lick me afterwards. But it's got to the point now that if I go outside with the dogs and I don't take them to the blackberry bush, that thing they do when they sit down and they refuse to move. So they won't go on their walk until they've eaten their blackberries, which is a problem when the blackberries go over, and it takes a lot of time. But the reason why I'm talking to you about brambles and something that we're so familiar with and something we so appreciate is because I was struck recently by a story of a friend of mine, a campaigner, a YouTuber. She's called Kezia, City Girl in Nature. She's grown up in inner city London. Lots of her friends, don't have that same passion that she has about nature and wildlife. And one of the videos she created, and I think I'll always remember it, is that she took her friends, mid-20s, out for a little nature walk to listen to the birds, to look at some of the most common plants that we've got in the UK. And they stopped by a blackberry bush. And she said, "Oh, do you want a berry?" And her friend said, "What do you mean?" And they didn't know that blackberries were safe to eat. They've never eaten one before. They didn't know about the plant itself. They didn't know that that was an option. And isn't that sad that we live in a world today where in 2025, where inner city people sometimes, in communities don't know that blackberries are safe to eat. They don't have that form of connection. And I think that's really what we've got to focus on, is not only saving nature, but also saving our connection to it and encouraging others and engaging with others that might be less fortunate than we are, don't have that privilege to really connect to it and show them what is out there. Because we only protect what we love, and that's key. So let's start with the blackberries. Anyway, I'll move on now. I've finished rambling. You'll be pleased to know. Right, so now I'm going to introduce you to the AGM panel. Of course, we've already heard from Debbie Tan, our Chief Exec. Shortly, I will invite David Jordan, the Chairman of the Trust, to give his report, followed by Richard Green-Wilkinson, our Treasurer, who will report on the finances. Also in attendance, what have I done?
She's not here.
Who? Natasha. Okay. Also not in attendance is not Natasha Thornlow, our Director of Finance and Resources, and Clive Chatters, our Company Secretary. But before we get into all of that, I have a sad instance to report, really, because a lot of our members may notice somebody is no longer with us. Michael Barron, who is one of the Trust's Vice Presidents, has recently passed away. He was one of the very earliest members of the Trust when it first formed, and he served for many years on the council, both as a trustee and a chair. He made a real difference to forming what Hampshire Wildlife Trust is currently and made a huge impact. We have passed on the Trust's deepest condolences to the family, along with thanks for many years of service to nature in the south. So, yeah, thank you, Michael, and he'll very much be missed. As many of you may know, David will be retiring from his role as chairman after this AGM, so this will be his last chairman's report. David will also be saying a final few words a little bit later on in the meeting. After David has given his chairman's report, I will ask Richard Green-Wilkinson, our treasurer, to give the annual financial report, after which I may invite questions from members on the two reports. So first up, David.
And thank you for those opening remarks. Megan, I'm here as the chairman to report on the year in question, as always. As Megan says, this will be my last rodeo, but I will be saying a few words of farewell in about half an hour. So let's focus on the year in question. Highlights, as always, before I kick into a little bit more detail. Firstly, it's been another very good year for the Trust. For a whole range of reasons, and I hope to bring that to life in just a moment. And the words that I always use, the words that the Charity Commission expects to hear from us every year, is that I can confirm that we are indeed a going concern, which will be no surprise to you. A few highlights from our annual report, which you will have received, I think, today. I'm not going to go through all these stats. These are all in the annual report, but just to bring a few of these to life. The one that I often focus on is membership, which has continued to grow, very pleasing indeed. Those figures are to the 31st of March. A huge range of support from our volunteers, which is quite fantastic. 1,407, which is very much in line with previous years. Social media continues to grow. And the amount of land that we're currently managing, about 5,000 hectares. I was born in 1955. I like to call that about 12,000 acres. It sounds bigger and better. Nature in recovery, I'm picking out here some of the titles, if you like, from our strategy. So within the year in question, we restored 90 hectares of floodplain at Manor House Farm, which is absolutely brilliant. 22 additional acres for the Duke of Burgundy at Deacon Hill, which I need to share with you. Our team has been focused on trying to achieve that for a long time, and it was a brilliant opportunity for us to achieve it. 26,000 orchids recorded at Nor Hill. I can only imagine that was done on a sampling basis, but it is still, and if you've never been there, I'm sure you have, it's a magical experience when the orchids are out. 38,000 butterflies recorded across 39 reserves. We've got more than that, but across those. And our land holding on the Isle of Wight again was expanded, following, I think, a brilliant period over the last few years on the island. I'd like to just play a short video.
Hi, I'm Jack. I'm the Reserve Officer at Blashford Lakes. Today we've been installing a nest tower for swifts and for house martins. So at the top of the pole we've got 23 swift boxes and we've got 12 house martin cups. And on top of that we've got a solar panel which powers the bird cooler, which we hope will help lure the birds in and use the feature for nesting. Both of those species, swifts and house martins, they've really suffered really bad declines over the last few decades. Both red listed and they really need our help, so we hope this feature is really going to give them a bit of a leg up. We've had funding from Hampshire Ornithological Society for this project, so a massive thanks to them and thanks to Hampshire Swifts as well for providing advice on where to locate the tower and sort of some of the technical details as well.
So you heard there the people or the organisations who have supported that. I'm very much hoping to get swift boxes on my own house this year. I'm just slightly ashamed I haven't done it yet. Very, very important stuff. Again, nature in recovery, 60,000 Zostera seeds collected. You'll recall this is a major project that we have been focusing on, and indeed other wildlife trusts too, around our UK coastline, because the restoration of seagrass beds is of huge importance for biodiversity and also carbon capture and storage. Again, some metrics there about the huge support that we receive from members of the Trust, but also other members of the public and other organisations. Nature as a solution, Wilder Little Duxmoor, again, you'll recall this was our first farm that we purchased on the island, and we're now in the process of restoring to wildlife, continues to show some amazing results. When I first heard about this, I did wonder how 3 new species of earthworm actually found their way to the site. Maybe they were there anyway, but it is brilliant the way these things are growing. Our first biodiversity net gain and nitrate mitigation scheme in the New Forest, which I think helps to show the way about how development can fund the restoration of nature. And again, just one more example, at Stubbington, 40 acres of arable land transformed into a wildflower meadow. Advocacy and campaigning, again picking up Megan's introductory remarks, huge focus about public engagement. It's a core part of our strategy. Tipner West, finally we think we may have enabled the killing off of that terrible plan to build on one of our most precious wildlife habitats. Huge public engagement there. Save Our Chalk Streams has really energised local people, and we took part in a Restore Nature Now march in London last year, where over 60,000 people called for urgent action. Communities and influence, again, a huge part of what we do. Seeing is believing is something that the Royal Society of Wildlife Trusts started a handful of years ago. It's an immensely powerful way of bringing key players together, many of them leaders from the wildlife trusts across the UK, and we hosted a fantastic event on the island, which I think has really energised all sorts of wonderful initiatives around wildlife and sustainability. Garden champions there at the bottom. I was talking to one of our great garden champions just now, and I've seen just how much you can do in an urban environment, which is really, really important. Looking forward, obviously we're 7 months into this year. We've got a great plan which we're delivering, lots of new and exciting things. And of course, a bit later this morning, we are launching our strategy refresh. So I'm going to hand back to Megan, but I'm very happy to say that I will be departing from the trust. Not that I'm happy to be departing from the trust, but in a manner which I know is thriving and very healthy indeed. Thank you.
I will be inviting members again to ask any questions about the report, but we'll hear from Richard first. So please welcome Richard, our Treasurer, who is going to give the financial report.
Good morning, everyone. So the financial report for the year ended 31st March 2025. Well, firstly, here are the key points that summarise our financial year. 2024-25 is a challenging year, a drop in income, an increase in costs. But we are in a good state due to robust financial management and prudent budgeting. We have healthy financial reserves to manage long-term obligations and ongoing responsibilities. But the future outlook is challenging, so we're relying on your support more than ever. Well, how do we do? The headline, a surplus of £1.8 million. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? But restricted fund surplus, as you see, is £1.76 million. Now, as you probably know, restricted fund is where we get grants or donations for specific purposes, and the funds must be spent for that purpose. So a surplus means the funds have been received, but not yet spent. Restricted fund income is important to us. The more we receive, the more work we can carry out for wildlife and the environment, providing important work and helping to cover our costs. But what about the unrestricted surplus? Just £43,000, down from the previous year's £4.1 million. Now that's sort of better in a bar chart, isn't it? The blue lines are income and the orange lines are expenditure. So as you see, it's come down quite a bit, and we're almost break even on unrestricted funds. And we have a deficit budget for the current year. Is this a concern? Well, in accountant speak, yes and no. I shall explain. In recent years, we've made good surpluses, allowing us to increase our land reserves, consequently making bigger impact while benefiting from economies of scale. As a consequence, our total assets have grown from £19.4 million 2 years ago to £26.2 million now, all ensuring we are resilient in these more uncertain times. Well, let's look at total income. It's a challenging year in terms of income, 16% reduction from the previous year, so it's quite a big fall. As we shall see, fundraising income streams performed strongly, but nature-based solutions income dropped year on year, the backdrop of market uncertainty and shifting policy positions and statements from the new government. So the point is, it's outside of our control, sadly. Total income for the year was £9.9 million compared with £11.7 million for the previous year. Okay, so let's look at the details. Membership. We continue to be hugely grateful for the support we receive from our membership. Membership subscription income grew by 4.8% to almost £1.5 million. Thanks largely to support increase of 414 and 570 existing members generously uplifting the value of their subscriptions. That's fantastic. Thank you to those of you who've done that. Moving on, donations. Again, it's a good story. Our partners, supporters, members and friends contributed to an outstanding year across our fundraising and philanthropy income streams. Donations totalling £1.3 million. The highlight, very important, a response for almost 1,000 supporters donated towards our urgent land purchase appeal to secure an extension for our Lymington Reedbeds Nature Reserve. So that's fantastic. And significant donations from individuals which supported work including trainee positions, reserves management, grazing, and our education programs. Okay, next. Gifts in wills, legacies. We received £878,000 through gifts in wills, representing an incredible investment by 26 individuals in the long-term future of wildlife and the ecosystems across Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. Gifts in wills continue to provide crucial source of funding in the Trust's ongoing battle to preserve and protect our natural world. We are deeply grateful for those who have chosen to give in this way and will ensure these funds have the greatest possible impact for nature. Okay, moving on to the problem issue, nitrates. In fact, our nitrate mitigation programme invoiced £1.67 million from nitrate credit sales at our 2 rewilding sites in the Isle of Wight. But that is down from £4.2 million the previous year. But as explained last year, actually, we have set aside 40% of that money to maintain the rewilded land. So a lot of that money is not actually available for our general use. So just a bit more about that, about nitrates. While our external policy landscape contributed to a challenging year in terms of nature-based solutions income, the programme continued to support nature recovery by mitigating and reducing the impact of planned housing development and through the ongoing nature recovery to our new nature reserves. So the point is, all good work helping to reduce the nitrates in the soil, which of course is a major problem. So in summary, 71% of our income is unrestricted. It's critical to us because it can be spent wherever need is greatest, supporting all aspects of our work. Restricted fund income totalling £2.82 million, an increase of 22% on the previous year, so that's fantastic. Okay, that's the income. How about the expenditure? Total expenditure increased by 10% to £7.97 million. Staff costs for the year totaled £4.1 million and equates to a 10.6% increase. That seems like a lot, but in fact, of course, it's largely due to recruitment for several new roles. Actually, we're in a good position. We've managed to fill a lot of our roles, and that's very important. We need the people to do the work, of course. One of the problems, of course, is the operating costs are expected to continue rising. As you know, increased national insurance costs and inflation, the great scourge of charities, both major factors. What about a charitable spend? 85% of the total expenditure, including a portion of staff costs, went towards charitable activities. There's a whole list of them there. I hope you can read them, and all good stuff. So I'm now going to move on to the balance sheet. Land and property assets, £13.9 million, and as David mentioned, just under 5,000 hectares under management. In addition, we have investments in cash amounting to £10.4 million at 31st March, which includes money set aside to provide for the long-term maintenance of the rewilded land. So we'll just have a look at the investments. Investments are managed by CCLA, the bulk of the investments, through their charity's ethical investment fund. The funds are invested worldwide, as you might expect. So the US market has a big impact. Consequently, the funds have suffered not only from the US government policy, dare I mention Trump, but also from the sharp fall in the dollar, also for the same reason. Hence, I'm afraid, with a deficit of £94,000, not really surprising in the circumstances. But the lower risk investments are in the Rathbone Ethical Bond Fund, and we received £175,000 interest on deposits this year, helped by high interest rates. A quick look at the funds breakdown. £17.8 million in general funds, of which £8 million are in designated fund, £8.4 million in restricted funds, and a very small endowment fund of £5,000. So I'll leave you with a summary, and this contains some of the phrases I mentioned earlier. We've had an exceptional 2 years prior to this due to nitrate mitigation. We're now back to a more normal budget. While the past year has been challenging, we're in a good state due to robust financial management, prudent budgeting, and the success of our income generation strategy. We are invested entirely in truly ethical funds. We have healthy financial reserves to manage long-term obligations and ongoing responsibilities. Our accounts have been audited by Safri LLP with a clean audit report. Thank you, Safri. But the future outlook is challenging. Your support is more critical than ever. Thank you.
As I finish closing the AGM, I would just like to say a really big personal thank you to David. This is his final day serving as trustee and chairman before he retires from the role. And David, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you. Over the last 3 AGMs, you have, well, I remember doing my first one, I had no idea what I was doing, but you really settled me, welcomed me as president, and your advice and warmth and passion for nature has just been astounding. So thank you very much from me personally, and I can pretty much say everyone in the room, so thank you very much. And I'll hand over to you now, David, for your final part, saying what you want to say.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Megan. We've still got some formal business to go through. Firstly, I'd like to offer my thanks to you as members for your attendance today. I do this every year. It's incredibly important that members take part in our AGM, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. I'd also like to take this opportunity to welcome Ned and Joy as new trustees, and I'm very pleased to share with you that, subject to election today, which has now gone ahead, Joy was appointed as chair of the Wildlife Trust as my successor, and I'd like to welcome Joy to that role. I hope you have an amazing time in the role, Joy. Just before we carry on with the rest of the meeting, I'd like to say goodbye to 2 people who are leaving today or about to leave. One of those is Julian Roberts, one of our trustees who's been on council for 4 years. He's been a great trustee. You re-elected him last year. Very sadly, he's had to stand down early just through sheer pressure of work. He's of international renown in the marine environment, and it's just become overwhelming for him. He's been a great trustee, and he undertook a really professional review of our whole approach to health and safety about 9 months ago, if I recall correctly, and was approved by council, and we're now implementing those recommendations. The other person to whom I'd like to say goodbye, who's leaving the trust at the end of the month, is none other than Clive Chatters. Clive has worked for the trust in a variety of roles for nearly 40 years, the last 15 of which he's been company secretary. It's been a real pleasure to work with Clive over the years, or sometimes, as it's felt, work for Clive over those years. Clive will be known to a great many of you, probably all of you, as an outstanding ecologist, an outstanding national historian, very widely published, very widely read, and he's, in my view, performed a fantastic role for the Trust. He's always shared his knowledge, and having discussed with him his future plans, I know that he won't stop. But I'd like to express my profound appreciation, Clive, for everything you've done for and with the Trust over so many years. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Megan. How's that? Is that better? I'm going to find it slightly better than being stuck behind the lectern. As you know, I've been a trustee for 10 years and chairman for 9. I've got about 5 minutes to go, I think. I wanted to start with a few thank yous. I've thanked you already as members for being here today, but I also want to thank you for being here for the last 10 years. And again, you know the importance that I attach to our membership. I want to thank our wider supporters too, who are many and legion, ranging from businesses to individuals, to legators, to volunteers, everything that they have done for our trust over so many years. I'd like to thank my fellow trustees, past and present. We've been blessed in this trust with having an incredibly high calibre of trustees on the board, and I think that also reflects the esteem within which this organisation is held. And those trustees have made my job as chair extremely easy, and I say that with absolute sincerity. It's been great, and I really appreciate that. And my final thanks, of course, go to Debbie and the team. It's lovely to be up here with Debbie and the directors for my last few minutes. As I said elsewhere, the words, "my staff are amazing," are greatly overused, I think. And they're not my staff, but if they were, I would say they are absolutely amazing. And the achievements that we've seen over the years are really down to Debbie and the team. And it's been a real privilege for me to be along for that ride. So a huge thanks from me for that. It's also been an opportunity for me to reflect on my own role, and I started by looking at what you might call personal impact, and that brought to mind the last AGM that we held at the Guildhall in Winchester. Many of you will have been present at that, and I recall that as being a very good AGM. You know, sometimes MGMs go well, and sometimes they go brilliantly, and I thought this one went brilliantly. And I felt a quiet moment of satisfaction because I thought my presentation had gone well. I thought that I'd coordinated some good Q&A, taken part in some debates and so on. So it was with a feeling of quiet satisfaction that I was washing my hands downstairs after the meeting, and the chap next to me said, "I've just been to the Wildlife Trust AGM." He said, "It's fantastic. Probably the best I've ever attended." And he paused and he said, "Were you there?" So personal impact, no. So what about leadership? This brought to mind, back in the days when I was paid, I used to have a six-floor office somewhere along the south coast. Once a week, what I tried to do was to walk along each corridor. It was all open plan. I used to sort of drift down each corridor, not really soliciting discussions, but if anybody wanted to talk to me, they were free to do so. Down at the end of floor 4 was the IT department, actually managed nationally, but hosted by me. And there was a chap called Frank, whose desk was right next to the corridor. We never actually stopped and talked, but every time I passed him, I would say, "Morning, Frank." He'd say, "Morning, David." And this went on for 2 years. "Morning, Frank." "Afternoon, David," whatever it was. After 2 years, he left. He got promoted and he moved on. And the day after he left, they told me his name was James. So not leadership. I've also been told that I judge too quickly. Somebody told me once, before you judge someone, walk a mile in their shoes. And then if you do judge them, at least they're a mile away. And you've got their shoes. So this really is not about me or my judgment or anything. It is, of course, about the trust and what has been achieved and what's changed over the last 10 years. Just look at the shape of the curves here, not worrying too much about the figures. Sorry, Joe, I'm in your way. This is the spend on charitable activities, and it has doubled. It's gone from 3,000 a year to 6,000 last year. So that's not a bad metric, I would say, for any organisation, not least under the turmoil that we've all been through. Land on our management. Again, just look at the shape of the curve. The dip there, by the way, was when we had to give up at the end of a lease of one of the properties that we were managing. But again, a very strong upward trend and delivery in line with our strategy. Also interesting here is I've put the number of reserves, and despite the fact that we've acquired separately quite a lot of land, the number of reserves hasn't really changed. And this is quite an important message because going back 15 years ago, Lawton said, bigger, better, more joined up. And so the whole emphasis has been, the strategy has been for the team, John's nodding here, has been to try and identify where we can add to our land holdings, not buy more little or acquire more little isolated land holdings. So the fact is, you can have a site here and a site here, and you buy the bit in the middle, so 2 + 1 = 1. And of course, if you take that to its logical conclusion, we'll end up with 2 reserves. One will be called Hampshire, and the other one will be called the Isle of Wight. So I think some very interesting stats here. The number of members also we've talked about. I've noticed early on in my tenure as chair that whatever the team focused on, we did brilliantly at. And I think for those first 2 years, we were not focusing on membership. And when we did, you can see what happened. If we look at what's happened in the wider environment too, within the last 10 years, the whole emphasis of ecological collapse and climate breakdown has really come to the fore. I've been working with the practicalities of climate change in my professional role for 25 years or so, but the scale and pace of change that we've seen in the last 10 years around the impacts of climate change have caught me by surprise. It's here, it's now, it's not something in the future. So it's not just wildlife, it's the whole environment that we need to address. The twin sides of the same coin, as one of the questions brought out just now. We talk a lot about biodiversity, but it's the abundance of individuals that is also absolutely crucial. There's no point having 1,000 species and only one individual each. What you want is lots and lots and lots of them. You want lots of insects, so you get lots of birds. So bioabundance has become increasingly important again over the last 10 years, and getting people on nature's side is absolutely crucial so that the inevitability of valuing wildlife becomes front and central politically. We've had a fantastic strategy, and many of you will be staying on today for the launch of our refreshed strategy, and I pay huge credit again to the team here for, I think, one of the best strategies that I've seen. It reflects the global ambition of 30 by 30. It reflects the work that we do nationally with fellow trusts across the UK, but I think also Debbie has led a pioneering team here in terms of the developing the thinking around our new strategy, and the refresh, which you'll see later today, I think is inspiring. There's some other things too, and I try and skip through these because we're running out of time, but I think other things have changed in those 10 years, which again I would perhaps call culture. Our voice has become much more confident in the public arena. If you look at Titna, which we've mentioned several times today, we spoke with confidence and we spoke with evidence, and people listened, and we got the right result. And I think the confidence with which we speak now outweighs what it was 10 years ago. We're a trusted deliverer. People lend us literally millions of pounds, and who would lend a charity millions of pounds if they didn't trust them? We're trusted to deliver this year, next year, and actually for the next 120 years. If we look slightly wider, we are one of 46 wildlife trusts. There's a central charity called the Royal Society of Wildlife Trusts, which does a fantastic job in terms of coordination, policy, invigoration, leadership. Delighted that we've got the Chief Executive of Royal Society of Wildlife Trusts today, but he in the last 5 years, I think in particular, has brought that movement together across the whole of the UK, and we're so much more powerful as a single voice than we were previously as 47 much more fragmented voices. We as a trust, I know, are respected at a national level, and I think probably, enough said, we're highly respected at a national level. We've developed a commercial nous, which I think was probably not absent, but hadn't come to the fore previously. We've heard about nitrates and the income that's been achieved as a consequence of that, and that has helped us transform some of the metrics which I put up before. And fundamentally, we don't just acquire the best. You could say that NEP led in terms of helping our understanding about what you can do with poor quality agriculture. You can actually transform poor quality land into something which is enormously rich for wildlife. And we've been great at that too, particularly and very, very evidently on the island, but also on the mainland here too in Hampshire. Now, I wanted to spend that time just reflecting back, But I also need, I think, very briefly to glance at the future. And that glance does show us that we're going to have significant challenges. The international leadership and the international policy direction is probably about as bleak as I've seen it in 30 years. But I will close with these words. Having known the team, both nationally and locally, I'm absolutely convinced that we have the right people in place to take advantage of the opportunities which I know are there and do brilliant stuff for wildlife. Thank you.
We are almost at the end, and David has one more job to do shortly, actually. And I'm only going to take a minute or two, but I just really wanted to add my own personal thanks, David, to you. Being a chair of a trust actually is probably not that easy a job, but you've done it with huge good grace, huge advice. Your wisdom and support for me has been amazing. Sometimes I need reassurance. I need someone to chat things through, chew the fat, test ideas, get that sort of confidence boost and that wisdom and advice, and you've been really brilliant at giving me that. So thank you very much. You've been an amazing chairman, and we're all going to miss you very much indeed. And thank you for everything you've done for the trust. And we will stay in touch. So I've said lots of other things in private, so I won't embarrass you any further, but thank you for everything you've done. And we are in the last few minutes before the break. Just back to you.
Great stuff. So thanks, Debbie. I've just got a few formal things to say by way of closure. Finally, I'd like to thank Megan, our president. I share Debbie's opening remarks. Megan has been absolutely brilliant as our president. We really do appreciate her presence. And thank you very much indeed for presiding over us again today. Thank you to Craig from Royal Society of Wildlife Trusts, who has attended this morning, but also is taking part in the rest of the day's events, which promise to be very exciting indeed. So I do hope that we'll see you all there. And thank you very much indeed for attending.